Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another live stream. And tomorrow, Chelsea head up to Newcastle for their final Premier League fixture before the World Cup begins. Not in the best of form. In fact, on our worst run of form since under Antonio Conte in 2017. Lost 3 of our last 4 games. Obviously dumped out the Carabao Cup in midweek. Sitting 7th in the Premier League table. It's not going too well for Graham Potter at the moment. Patience is going to be key, but at the same time, we do need to start picking some results up because ultimately it is a results-based business. Plenty to get stuck into today. Obviously, everything that's going on now, what can be done to improve things. Looking ahead to the Newcastle team as well, and any of your questions that come in the chat, guys. So please do get involved. I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by Oli. Mate, great to have you on board. How are you feeling heading into this game tomorrow? Because I've got to be honest, we are overwhelming underdogs in this one. Newcastle flying high under Eddie Howe in 3rd place in the table. Newcastle's always a difficult place to go anyway. They're banging form and we're anything but banging form. So you fully expected a tricky afternoon?
It'll be tricky, but in a funny way, I'm also quietly confident. Chelsea always tend to do the best when we're the underdogs regardless. So the fact that there'll be actually a lot of pressure on Newcastle to perform against us, and it'll be one of their harder games of the season, actually, I think. So there'll be a lot of pressure on them to perform, and I hope we can get a result from it. Saying this at the start of the season would have been laughable, but, they're really nailed on to challenge for top 4, at least for Europe this season. So it's going to be a difficult game, especially like you said, because they're in such good form. But, you never know. One-off game, anything can happen.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, obviously, we are really struggling at the moment. You've got people saying all sorts of things at the moment in terms of, manager's not good enough, this and that. Ultimately, it's a combination of things. But as we've said before, as I just said at the top of the show, the results do need to come. Whilst we're fully aware that we need to be patient and it's going to take time to fix this mess, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be sorted out at Chelsea in terms of getting players out of the club that don't want to be here, getting players out of the club that aren't good enough, making ruthless decisions to move this football club forward. We need to do all that whilst picking results up as well, because we are 7th at the moment. Yes, the gap to the top 4 is not insurmountable, but another loss tomorrow and you start falling further points behind, and that top 4 task becomes ever greater. What did you make of the performance against Man City in the week briefly? Because by all accounts, we did play better than we played against Arsenal. Admittedly, a very low bar in that situation, but we actually created a lot of opportunities. I know City got us quite a lot, and they created a lot of opportunities as well. But it was an improved performance. But ultimately, it was the same old story.
It was to a certain degree in that we just couldn't finish our dinner in front of goal, right? Hall had 2 good chances, and there were other players who had some chances as well. But actually, on the whole, I was quite encouraged by the performance. I thought we actually did get at Man City quite a lot. We held them for a long time. The difficulty was obviously once they went 1 and then 2-0 up, it's so easy for them to just pass it round the back and make it, more or less just passing it round and to finish the game off like that. But actually, I was really encouraged by a lot of the attacking patterns we saw. When you actually look at it to a certain degree, the 2 goals we conceded was Amara's free kick. Say what you want about Koulibaly, whether he should have jumped or not. Personally, think he probably should have done. It's impossible for Mendy to save that really otherwise. On the other hand, the second goal was, a mistake in a way from Mendy himself, palmed the ball, right into the path of Alvarez. So, it's fine margins, actually, that we did end up losing that game by. We had the chances to go 1-0 up, even 2-0 up, and if Lewis Hall managed to bury his chances, unlucky to the lad, probably just had a bit of a heart-in-mouth moment in his first, in one of his biggest games of his career. So, I'm sure as he plays a little bit more, he'll gain a little bit more of that composure back. So ultimately, actually, I think there was a lot of meltdown on Twitter over nothing. And I think, largely you can say that because of the results and the recent performances haven't been good enough. But actually, I was really encouraged by what I saw against a decent City team. It wasn't their first team, but it was a strong team with a lot of really world-class players in there. So to actually take them as far as we did, wasn't the worst. I thought we did all right. Not to mention, I think being dumped out of the Carabao it's not the worst thing in the world,
No.
especially for our season. You know, like obviously everyone wants to win every trophy they can, and if I had the choice about whether to win or lose that game, obviously I would have wanted to win it because I want to go far in the cup and I want us to win things. But actually, being dumped out of the cup early by City like that is actually, in a way, a blessing in disguise because we're going to have fewer fixtures for congestion. We've already got a lot of issues with injuries and stuff like that. So and giving Potter a bit more time to get things right on the training ground instead of having to just prepare for the next game every week is actually going to be quite valuable.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I've just brought this up on the screen here. I mean, I don't think anyone knows the answer. It's the $1 million question. But, in the last 5 games, we've scored 4 goals, as displayed in the tweet there. 4 goals in the last 5 PL games, and poses the question, with all the attacking players, why is this an issue? Why can't we finish? I mean, what do you think the problem is? Because you look at it and, we've got some very talented footballers, but for whatever reason, every single one of them, when they get in front of goal, completely loses all of their footballing ability and cannot stick the ball in the back of the net.
It does seem like that, doesn't it?
It does. Like, I have zero confidence in any of our players when they're through on goal. You just or to finish a chance.
I know what you mean.
We could have scored. I know Ortega had a really good game midweek, but we should have scored twice against City yesterday. I mean, the amount of chances to be created against the Pep Guardiola side I felt was a big positive for sure. But ultimately, it's not about creating the chances; it's about sticking them away.
Well, it's about both, isn't it? Because if you don't create the chances, you can't put them away.
Yeah, for sure.
But you've got to be clinical, in those moments.
What do you think the problem is in terms of the finishing? I mean, what sort of, because you see them put finishing clips out on Twitter and they're all going in. I mean, what do you think that the issue is with the finishing? Because these guys have demonstrated that they can score goals throughout their career, but yet when it comes to Chelsea, everyone's struggling to stick the ball in the back of the net. And 4 goals in your last 5 games, that's really poor.
Well, yeah, it is. But I think one of the reasons behind it is it goes down to our chance creation, actually. If we don't have a player who's going to really be creating in the midfield and actually providing lots of balls over the top and things like that, it might be the classic story we've always been talking about is, like, for example, if you're at Man City, if you miss a big chance, you'll get another one in 5-10 minutes anyway. Right, so you may as well, you'll put it in the back of the net eventually. Whereas at Chelsea, if you get a big chance, that might be the only one you're going to get in the game, and that is going to add a psychological element to it. If every chance is your only chance that you get every game, it's going to psych you out quite a lot more often than not. Than rather than thinking, if you miss it, you'll get another one soon. So the other thing is as well, so if you're not creating that many chances, you also don't have the ability to a certain degree sort of practice on the pitch, if you know what I mean, of just sticking the ball in the back of the net. And it happens sometimes, players go through runs of form where for whatever reason, everything that they do and it just doesn't go in. Having said that, it is an interesting phenomenon that it seems to be happening for the whole team, and I would probably put that down partly as well to confidence. I imagine confidence is probably pretty low in the squad at the moment. So ultimately, it's probably a few factors, but I don't think any of it's permanent. For what it's worth. No, I think it'd be it for a lot of these cases. It'll take maybe a few good performances and a few goals going in, and that confidence returns and. If we're creating a few more chances, people are going to get more of an opportunity to score. And I think we're trending in the right direction, even though, results recently haven't been fantastic.
I mean, I don't really know what the answer is to this problem because, as I said, we've seen these players score plenty of goals throughout their careers. Yes, it doesn't help us that we don't create that many opportunities. So when you do miss an opportunity, it's almost like a double punishment because you're probably not going to get many more of them in the game, and it's probably going to cost the team one way or another, whether that costs you the win or whether it costs you a draw. That's actually the same thing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, but it does set ourselves up in a difficult position in games because we know that, and we've seen it many times before, we can dominate a game, but because we can't finish and don't take our chances, we then end up going 1 down, and then we often end up losing the game because we cannot stick the ball in the net. We don't seem to take advantage when we're on top in games. And that again is another issue. And like, there's nothing the manager can really do about it. All we can do is work on our finishing and training. But there's no replication for being through on goal or having a great chance in a game that you can really recreate. You just have to be able to do it in the moment.
Especially in terms of like the psychological element of it as well, and because everything will be easy on the training pitch because there's no pressure, and then when you actually get into a stadium and it's got 60,000 people in it or whatever, and you throw on goal, half of them are screaming one thing, half of them are screaming the other. There's a lot of a psychological aspect, I think, there as well. The other, but I think we really should focus on the idea mostly that it's down to chance creation more than anything else, because everyone's seen at one point or another, either for Sterling or Mahrez or someone like that for City, like a compilation of them like missing a ball from like 2 yards out, or scuffing it, and and the difference is with those City games is they'll get 3 or 4 of those, or or at least 2 of those that are really simple, and then a few more easier chances as well in the game, and they'll win that game 4-0, 5-0.
Yeah.
The difference is if it's your only chance and you miss it at Chelsea, it's unlikely you'll get another one. And that's why I think it's so important, we need to be focusing on creativity, in the players that we sign soon, because I think there's a real lack of it at the moment.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And I think that also comes down to, for me, despite all the money we've spent, years and years of really poor squad planning, and to a certain degree, really poor recruitment.
Yeah.
Really poor recruitment. You look at the money we spent. You win the Champions League, which was fantastic, but let's make no mistake about it. That squad massively overachieved, and it lulled people into a false sense of security, thinking the squad was much better than it was. That, in fact, was a very average squad, if we're being perfectly honest. And now it's obviously played out that way. But to not invest in that team when you're at the top, if you don't invest when you're at the top, you're asking for trouble. And that was like, we were at the top at that point, having won the Champions League, and you bring in Saul and Bettinelli, and you spend £100 million on Lukaku. That is a horrendous transfer window. It's so bad. And yeah, I know this summer we've tried to fix things, and it's Bowley's first summer in, but even then, signing Aubameyang and then sacking Tuchel the game after.
And there's other things as well,
that's poor planning. I mean, even
selling Gilmour for 9 million and then poaching Brighton's manager. There's no where there's like a lack of cohesion there. The important thing to remember, obviously, is a lot of these. I said this actually earlier to some of my friends. I said, in the same way that. So when you look at us versus City are on paper, right, whether you like it or not, 4 years ahead or 4 or 5 years ahead in their sort of process, so to speak, than we are, right? Guardiola was brought in what, 2017 or something, 2016, something like that, right? So we're 4 or 5 years ahead at the moment. And, and obviously that allows him to implement his style on the pitch over half a decade, right? Which is obviously going to help in terms of scoring goals and things like that. The other thing that I don't think people will also understand is actually that cohesion also translates to the board and upstairs in the club. If they've been running that show at Man City, since 2012, 2011, something like that, 2010, whenever they bought the club, and they've had their chance to get it wrong, and now they've fixed the kinks of it, and they've been working for over a decade on the most efficient way possible. You got to remember at the end of the day that Bowley's only been here 6 months. What to a certain degree, what do you expect? Especially with, to a certain degree, the mess that was left in after the previous regime. It's not going to be something that is fixed magically overnight, and so you are going to have some of those things where there's a bit of cohesion missing, and you're going to make mistakes. Tuchel and Aubameyang was one example, Gilmour's another. But I think more often than not, it looks like we're actually trending in the right direction with what we're doing with the board. Bowley seems to know what he's doing with the personnel he's bringing in. Lots of very smart minds, analytical minds, football-minded people, because he's a businessman at the end of the day. But he's bringing the football people around him. So that he's building the foundation now. So it's not going to all be perfect straight away from the board level. And I think people need to recognize that that's going to take some time to gain cohesion as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it certainly is. And those things are being put in place. But football's one of those things, isn't it, where people have got no patience. Like they think a 2, 3, maybe 4 year sort of rebuilding project, they expect it to be done in 2 months. And that just isn't the case. And there's a complete lack of a basic understanding of how a football team is built. You know, now more than ever, you can see that the hiring and firing model, whilst it worked okay for the cups, that has not brought consistency in the league at all. And it
to a
just
certain degree it did,
doesn't.
But well, to a certain degree it did back in the day. I think
not anymore.
The difference is football's moved on.
Yeah.
You know, we have operated in a certain way for a long time. You know, and you could say almost in the last sort of 4 or 5 years of Abramovich's reign, that difficulty, and probably started sort of after Conte left. That, you know, which coincidentally is roughly when Klopp and Pep came in. Big shock, right? That approach no longer fully works because you've then got managers and teams that are building for success over sustained periods of time, and while the hire and fire is good for a cup here and there, it got less and less and less successful the closer we've gotten to this point now. And that's why we're in the mess we're in now. You know, to a certain degree, it's brought a success, tremendous success, you know, most successful British club in the last decade or whatever, or the last 20 years. And we can't knock that, and we can't knock Abramovich for that, because that was the model he ran the club on. Abramovich isn't here anymore, and now we have to do things in a different way because football's moved on and Abramovich isn't here anymore. So this hire and fire, win at all costs, it just doesn't fit now. You know, and you got a lot of people saying that, you know, if we sack the manager, or, you know, if we're going to change things up again, that it's all going to be different. But it'll be exactly the same. You know, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something to change. It won't.
It won't, and nothing else will change as well until ruthless decisions are made and players that aren't good enough to play for this club are sold.
Exactly.
And players that don't want to be at this club are sold. Yeah. And those ruthless decisions have to be made. Now, they might not be popular with the dressing room, they might not be popular with the fans, but ultimately you've got to make those big decisions. And I think there's a lot of big decisions to be made at Chelsea. And I think also, you know, Potter's I think in maybe not this press, and maybe another one's talking about, you know, there needs to be a cultural reset within the club as well, because everything's been run in such a way for so long, where people kind of looking over their shoulder, not knowing from day to day whether today's going to be their last day in the job or not. You know, obviously you get allegations of bullying behind the scenes within certain departments and stuff. You know, these people forget that a football club is more than just the playing squad and staff. It's so much more than that. And, you know, I think Chelsea does perhaps need a kind of a bit of a reset from top to bottom. But
it's like anything, you know, like people get sick, right?
Yeah.
And you can say the same about cultures. Cultures can get sick, societies can get sick, and football clubs are the same. Football clubs can get sick, and Chelsea are sick, right? Now, what we have now, in a certain way, if you want to sort of continue with this sort of medical analogy, is now we've got, you know, the equivalent of, you know, you say Potter and Bowley and whatnot are the antibodies, you know, who are going to come in and while, you know, fighting things off is going to be difficult and it's going to sap Chelsea's energy and make it hard for us to fight, you know, and make us feel unwell. Ultimately, the health of the club is the most important thing. And that's what they're moving towards in the long term. You know, you got to remember, at the end of the day, Bowley didn't buy the club to just languish in mid-table, not make any money, and not succeed. We've seen what he can do with the Dodgers. You know, it's absolutely paramount that we trust in what Bowley's trying to do, and that means putting trust in Potter as well. Whether you like him or not, whether you're happy with the results or the way we're playing or not at the moment, if you're not going to back him, you're going to be really miserable for a long time, because he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, even if we were to finish outside the top 4, which at the moment is looking like a distinct possibility,
could definitely happen outside the top 6.
We have to stick with him. You know, I think this season, within a certain degree, is almost, I don't want to say a free hit, but it almost is. You know, you're parachuted into a situation at Chelsea where the squad's in a mess, the club's a bit of a mess. It's gone through a big transition period in terms of new ownership, new people, new ideas. A manager that was very popular with the fans has been replaced, and you've had no pre-season, you've had no transfer window to bring in the players that you want to bring in. That's a really difficult situation to be parachuted into, on top of the fact that he's a guy that hasn't got any experience at the upper echelons of the game. In terms, obviously forged a very good career for himself, but no experience at managing a top club and managing a higher caliber of player than he has done previously. And with that comes bigger egos, bigger responsibilities, and whatnot. And people don't seem to take that on board. They don't seem to realize that, that's a massive change with Graham Potter as well. Yeah. It's a huge change to have to overcome, and the circumstances have been massively stacked against him. Yes, I think he's done certain things. He hasn't got certain things right with perhaps team selection. Some of his in-game management in certain games has been quite poor. But let's be real. Like, people have got short memories. Like,
yeah, he's only been here all of 5 minutes. And the other thing that frustrates me is when people are talking about Tuchel as well. Saying, "Oh, it wouldn't have been this bad under Tuchel." It probably would have. But two reasons for that. One, it probably would have been worse. Because of the culture at the club at the time. Tuchel had clearly lost the dressing room. No matter what comes out now or after the fact, it was very clear that the players on the pitch weren't performing, and there was a reason for that going on behind the scenes. Yeah. The other thing to say is that Tuchel wasn't sacked because of results. No. Tuchel was sacked because the club wanted to go in one direction, and he didn't want to. And his style of management doesn't correlate with that direction. With backing a manager, giving them time, building a squad, and building a competitive squad. Tuchel wants to win now. The difficulty is having to sacrifice now for later. But in sacrificing now, we will win more later. That's almost it's clear from especially from what Man City and Liverpool are trying to do, and have been doing very successfully, might I add. That backing a manager and backing a dynasty in a project over a sustained period of time is absolutely the way you have to do things. Because, like we said, the hire and fire was good once, and it's not anymore. So get with the times or get left behind.
Yeah, and as you said, football's massively changed as well, and it's not sustainable. That is not a sustainable model to win the Premier League. It's as simple as that. It really isn't. If we want to win the Premier League, we have to back the manager. We have to allow him to be here for 3, 4, 5 years, however long it is. Bring in all his own players that he wants, so that the squad becomes all his signings only, and majority of his signings, and we go from there. And yes,
now there's a limit, obviously. Like, if we're still playing. And if we're still saying if we're having results like Arsenal, like the Arsenal game, on a regular basis in 2 seasons' time, then you can clearly ask questions, obviously, because you're not making progress at that point. The idea is that Potter is going to build on his successes as he grows with the club. That's the idea. So get with it. Get with the program. There's a lot of real, like you say, there's a lot of people with very short-term memories, especially on Twitter and stuff at the moment.
We were getting smashed. We were getting smashed 4-1 at home to Brentford. Under Tuchel. Do we want to go back to that? Getting battered 3-0 by Leeds, to pathetic performance against Southampton away just this season. Not being able to beat the worst Man United side ever under Solskjaer.
Relegation fodder. Everton last season lost 1-0.
People have got short memories, and it's not a dig at Tuchel. It's not a dig at anyone. But
no, of course not.
People got short memories. It's not like we replaced the manager and we were playing unbelievable football, and now I've got a new manager and it's gone to shit.
And the other thing is like you say, ultimately people are focusing on the results, and it's a results-based business. I understand that, but the performances have on some cases been better, right? A lot better. Like when we played against both games, we played against AC Milan were much better than we would have played under Tuchel. The game against Salzburg was a brilliant game as well. Our game against Wolves was good. Obviously there's progress to be made, and there's signs that Potter is making the right impacts, but it's going to take time to bed in. Anyone expecting Potter to come in and I think the reason people are saying Potter is out of his depth is because they wanted him to come in and instantly make a change. And to a certain degree, you can argue Potter is out of his depth because he's never done this before, right?
And that's fine.
And that's fine. Yeah. If anyone who has a new job, if you've ever gotten a new job, lots of listeners here, right? I imagine lots of you at some point have had a new job. There's been a point at that job where you understand that you absolutely know nothing about what you're doing.
You're shit at it, yeah.
Yeah. And you're not very good at it, and you make mistakes, but you grow and you build with the job, and you eventually become competent at what you do and even excel in some cases, and that's what we're backing Potter to do.
Yeah, and I think he will. I think he will, given that time. I think he's a very good manager, and he will implement changes, and he will eventually get there. I think, but
like I said, he's not getting everything right, and he needs to be called out where he is,
sure.
And that's fine, and that is fair criticism. But calling him to be sacked 2 months into the job, 3 months into the job, lunacy, absolute lunacy.
It is ridiculous. I mean, it's going to take time. It's going to the standard at Chelsea and the aim is always to win trophies, but that should never change. But
Bowley recognises that too.
Yeah, but it's also acceptable and okay to accept that actually we're not at that standard at the moment. So the standards aren't changing. We just aren't at that standard at the moment, and that's okay to accept and to realise that. And I think a lot of people are struggling to comprehend that. We can't go. We can't go through a bit of a transition, a bit of a rebuild, without. But we still have to win stuff. That obviously, ideally, that would be great, but it doesn't necessarily really work like that. And people need to realise that. Do you know what? We might go a couple of seasons without winning anything, and but look, I don't want to refer to Arsenal as an example, but. Under Arteta, they haven't won anything. I know they obviously won that FA Cup when he first came in, but from then they haven't won anything. It's been difficult for them. But season upon season, you have seen a tangible improvement and there's been progress. And ultimately, that probably at some point will lead to winning something. And I think as fans, as long as you can see a tangible process, tangible improvement, season upon season, then you can put up with not winning the trophies if you can see that the team is getting better.
Absolutely.
Where you can't put up with it is if seasons are going by and nothing looks any better from when the manager first come in. Then you can start having a conversation about, is this the right direction to be going in? But until then, and only then there aren't any questions to be asked. At the moment, Potter is two and a bit months into the job. There should be no questions about replacing the manager at all for at least a couple of seasons,
Yeah, at least 1.5 seasons. Like, Jesus Christ.
It takes so long.
You get, especially with, like, the reason we brought in Potter was so we can play good football and succeed, right? The goals were twofold. The first one was to succeed. The second one was to play good football, right? Playing that form of football will allow us to succeed, but implementing that style of football takes time. And changing the culture of the club takes time. And the transfer plan strategy takes time. These aren't things that can be solved in 2.5 months. There's some, little things, little wins that you can get straight away, quick wins, right? But there aren't many. And with that, but now, like I said, now we've got the medicine into the club to cure it of its sickness, per se, and that's the other, medicine in this analogy takes time, doesn't it? You don't take medicine and instantly feel better a second later. Of course not.
Yeah, for sure. And that is it. And we just have to readjust our expectations slightly. And it's as simple as that. Having said that, though, man, let's segue back into the game a little bit. We are obviously not on a good run of form. As I said, 3 defeats from our last 4 games. If we do lose, which is quite likely, let's be perfectly honest. I don't think many Chelsea fans are going into this game tomorrow feeling particularly confident. Another loss for Potter is obviously stating the obvious, far from ideal.
It's helpful that the World Cup is directly after it, though.
Yeah,
I think there'd be a lot more pressure on if, because you'd be able to put a loss tomorrow up to a lot of things, depending on if players are a little bit hesitant about going into 50-50s because they don't want to get injured for the World Cup that's right around the corner, things like that. And as well, actually the World Cup itself will give Potter time to implement his style more with the players. It's going to allow him to build more of a relationship with the players, actually focus on the football as well, of the players who aren't going to the World Cup, of course. So and it'll allow us to distance ourselves somewhat from the recent performances, and then we can come back in Christmas time, and at the end of the year, and we're likely to have Reece James back, Chilwell back, Fofana back. It's going to be a different team.
Yeah, for sure. And Potter today in the presser saying about the World Cup, saying I've come from Brighton where everything was pretty much organised. I ended up here pretty quickly. You need time to reflect. And there is that because of the World Cup break. Sometimes you need to think, analyse, and if you have the space to do it, it's better. I think this World Cup break will be helpful. Obviously, he's not going to be working with the vast majority of the squad because most of them will be at the World Cup, but there's still a great group of players to be working with. Reece James doing his rehab, Chile doing his rehab as well. Obviously, the likes of Fofana, not at the World Cup. Still, he's going to be working with a good group of players. Aubameyang, Loftus-Cheek obviously didn't make it, Chalobah and whatnot. There's going to be time to do some good work with a number of key squad players that aren't at the World Cup. And actually, I think this could almost be used as potentially sort of a mini pre-season. I know they're going out to Dubai to do some warm weather training stuff. The guys that aren't at the World Cup. This break could be good for us, and it needs to be good for us because the schedule has been so intense up to the World Cup, but it doesn't get any easier afterwards.
Well, that's the thing, like so this break is really going to help us out. Like, and there's Potter there saying, "Listen, like time will be needed to make this fit." That's literally what he's saying: is need time to organize myself, need time to analyze things, in order to get the club where and to get the team performing the way he wants it to perform. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to be asking for. And I don't know, man. It seems to me like there's a lot of people who aren't willing to give him the time. And if that was the case, like what was the point of signing him in the first place?
Yeah,
and the thing is, but the thing is that really frustrates me is the second that we're winning it, and everyone will be lauding Bowley and lauding Potter, and saying how well of a job they're doing. Whereas they don't realize, sometimes the pain is what you have to go through to get to where you're trying to go. But anyway, enough on that.
Mate. I'll just get to a few things in the chat. I do agree with this. Some of Potter's lineups, some subs have been not great. Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
Lewis Hall. Yeah, I will get on to Lewis Hall in a sec, but he is superb. Oba shouldn't play. Yeah, I agree that Aubameyang shouldn't play. But I mean, we'll get into it in the team lineup. But I just think Aubameyang was a really strange signing, just in all circumstances. Didn't really make any sense to me at all at the time. But we can discuss that shortly. The game at Newcastle, they're flying high. This is going to be difficult. You've got Miguel Almiron in phenomenal form, just won the player of the month. Just won the player of the month. Obviously, Eddie Howe just won the manager of the month as well. So
you've got Guimaraes is in excellent form.
Bruno's in really well.
Form. Yeah, Trippier's in excellent form.
Yeah, that back line of Botman and Shah at centre backs. Dan Burn doing a great job at left back. Trippier obviously doing
so
really
strange,
well.
Isn't it? He's like 7 foot tall playing at left back. Really weird.
I
suppose I don't know how exactly Newcastle play, but I would imagine that allows them to sit as a 3 at the back and allow Trippier to bomb on.
No, they do a back 4, and then they go 3 in the midfield with Joe Willock, Joe Linton, and Bruno. And then, well, I don't know if Callum Wilson is going to play or not, but it normally be Wilson up top.
Both of them having a good game as well. Yeah. Willock and Wilson, both of them having good seasons.
And then probably be Wilson, Almiron, and then probably St. Maximum. I mean, it's all right, that, isn't it?
He's very tricky himself, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, where do you see this game being kind of won and lost? Do you think it's going to come down to that battle in the midfield again?
I'm not sure. Obviously, Bruno Guimaraes is going to be an excellent player. He's clearly going to be a world-class player. I don't, if Newcastle can hold on to him, it will be an absolute coup because, he's clearly an absolute baller. But I think actually there might be, I think one of our best chances in this game is going to be having a player on our right-hand side to get at Dan Burn down that left-hand side because he's not the quickest. He's very big, but he's not the quickest. So if you can play a good ball in behind there, maybe you'll have the opportunity for someone like Mount or Pulisic or Gallagher or someone like that to chase it down, or Broja, who can potentially beat him for pace and get him behind.
Yeah, I think that is going to be that will be a key for sure. Again, it just depends, doesn't it? Because
listen, like to a certain degree as well, it depends what Chelsea turn up. If we get the team that played reasonably well against City, or played amazingly against Salzburg, or played excellently against Milan, we'll win easily. Yeah, we know that. We know what the players can do. But if we get the ones who turn up against the Arsenal performance, or the Leeds performance, or the Southampton performance, you'll see what will happen, and it won't be pretty.
No, it definitely won't. But we've got the ability and we've got the players to do it. It's just, are the players going to turn up, and are the players going to deliver, and are the players that deserve to play going to be picked?
It's good that some of our players had a little bit of a rest in the week as well, because I think, like you said, the congested schedule makes it very difficult to play against these teams that only play football once a week, occasionally twice a week when the cup's on. So it'd be good that we Newcastle played in the cup, I believe.
Same night as us.
Yeah, same night as us, didn't they? And they will have played a reasonably strong squad for that, because they've got to get as far as they can in all their competitions as well. And we had some key personnel that had a bit of a rest. So maybe if we're a little bit fitter than them on the day, you never know.
You never know. Guys, before we get into the team, make sure you smash the likes on the stream. Let's get those likes up and subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. On the road to 2K subscribers, not far away now, so keep smashing that subscribe button. If you're in here now and you're not subscribed, then please do so. Oli, I've got it set up as a 4-3-3, mate. What do you think we're going to go with? Because we saw
It's a good question.
we saw, yeah, we saw us with the 5 against City in midweek and saw Lewis Hall in that left wing back slot. I personally wouldn't mind seeing him there again and starting this game. If I was picking a team,
I wouldn't.
If I was picking a team, I'd put him in. So I'm almost tempted to switch this to a 5 just so that we can.
I think it's more likely
Potter goes. Put him in.
I think it's more likely Potter goes with a 5. There is the possibility he wants to match them up in midfield with a 3. So maybe it ends up being like a more like a 5-3-2 setup. But it's difficult to predict Potter because he does like to tinker a lot, and we did rest a lot of players in midweek, and maybe that was part of the reason behind the formation change that we actually went with. I think it's hard to tell whether we'll go with whether we go with essentially a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 or what have you, or like you say, if we go with a back 4, you never know. Instead, if we do say Loftus, if we do Azpilicueta at right back, because we've still got our centre backs injured and things like that. It's a difficult one. I think if we're picking the team based on what we want to see, I think it'll probably be a back 3.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Mendy's going to be in goal. We already know that.
Yeah, because Kepa's out.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I think Mendy had a half decent game against City. I think he made some really good saves, but he still
poor mistake for the Alvarez goal, but did all right otherwise.
I feel really nervous when he's got the ball at his feet in the box. Like I just don't trust him with the ball.
I don't mind if he boots it. I absolutely, arguably, it's the best decision. because he's very nervy on the ball, and that's something that Kepa really does have over him.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would 100% agree. Mendy's going to be in. It's going to be, he's going to have a lot. I think he'll probably end up having quite a lot to do in this game. But yeah, some of his saves were good on in midweek, and I think he's going to do a solid enough job in terms of this back 3. Go on.
No, he did well to stop Grealish's efforts.
That's for sure. I mean, in terms of this back 3, I think
picks itself a little bit.
Two of them pick themselves.
Yes.
What do you think for the third spot? Because Koulibaly, 1, doesn't seem to be that in favour at the moment, and 2, I've got to be honest, he's not actually played that well since he's arrived. Realistically,
no, I would agree.
I think it's fair to say that he's not played as well as people thought he would have done. Obviously, he's still learning. He's been in Serie A his whole life. The Premier League is completely different, and it will take him a bit of time to get up to speed. But he hasn't been performing particularly well at all, if we're being honest. Cucurella, I think, had a decent game against City in that left centre back slot.
Had a really good defensive game against City.
Yeah.
Didn't do that much going forward, I didn't think, but it wasn't up to him because he was playing the centre back and Hall was the wing back.
This is a tricky one, because do you go with the physicality of Koulibaly, or do you go with Cucurella, who is probably in better form? I mean, what do you reckon? Because I thought this at the start of the season, this wouldn't have really been a conversation. You'd be like, well, Koulibaly plays in a back 3 would be starting for us every week. But now,
I think it should be Cucurella personally.
I think I do as well. I think I'd rather stick him in.
It allows him to have that sort of hybridized centre back wing back role, which I think he actually is quite good at. It's quite a specialist position. There aren't really many players in the Premier League who either do what he does or even can do what he does. So I think he's emerging into quite an important player in the squad.
Yeah, I mean, just on Koulibaly, what are your thoughts on him so far? Because
struggled so far. I think it's fair to say, like he could have done better in a lot of his performances. He was out injured for a short while, so he's been a little bit shaky since coming back from that. Obviously, he's got the ability to be an immense sort of physical presence in the back 3. He's got good speed, so it allows him to sort of catch up. If there's ever anyone who gets in behind, I think he played very well against. I can't remember what game it was, but no, he didn't play that well. But I remember him catching up for Chilwell lost the ball at wing back in a game, and he was able to race back and sort of actually fill that left wing back spot and clear out quite well. So he having the physical presence is important. So there's something to be said about him perhaps on things like, for having corners and stuff like that. Because, when you've got Dan Burn in the middle up for corners, there's you're going to have to pair him with someone. So,
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, if we want to play our best kind of type of football, I think it's probably going to be Cucurella, just because I think he's been, I think he's been a little bit unfairly maligned. Had a good game against City, and Koulibaly's looked a bit shaky.
For sure. And I thought actually as well, Cucurella did have a very good first half against Arsenal. Second half, it kind of fell apart, but he did have a good first half. Right wing back is tricky position for us at the moment because it's either Azpilicueta or it's Ruben. Ruben played in midweek. I felt defensively he really struggled. Obviously, he wasn't helped by the fact that Ziyech wasn't really tracking runners on the way back. So Gomez and Grealish were always 2v1 against him. Chalobah had to come over and help and give Ruben some support, leaving gaps in the middle. Of course, Ruben is going to get exposed defensively because he's not a defender. So
up against St. Maximin as well.
Well, up against St. Maximin, maybe Almiron or whoever else may end up playing there. I've got to be honest, I don't really like seeing Ruben play right wing back. I just don't think. I know he's done it on occasion, and he's
done
a
job, hasn't he? But
it's not his position, and
he's an excellent utility player. But in something like that, he's never going to be the specialist that you need, especially defensively. Like when you've got someone, I'm picturing it'll be sort of Saint Maximin on that left hand side, and I think you're going to need someone a little bit more defensively resolute, like Azpi, who can help organise the back line and can actually, because Azpi's actually quietly had a pretty decent season. Actually,
yeah, I've got to be honest. I'm actually surprised at how many minutes he's played, and two, at the fact that he's not actually been that bad when he has played.
Yeah, I would agree. I think his form has definitely dipped in the last couple of seasons. That just comes with age. His legs aren't what they used to be. He's gone from sort of being Mr. 7 out of 10 every week to sort of Mr. 6 out of 10 or 5 out of 10. So, but ultimately, I think defensively, he's going to put up much more of a fight against the likes of Saint Maximin. He's not quite as defensively naive as Loftus-Cheek. Just by the very fact that Loftus-Cheek is, of course, a midfielder, not a defender. Yeah. So Azpi's usually quite good against those tricky wingers. Actually, he's not so good on the pace, but against someone like Saint Maximin, he might be able to shut him down.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that makes sense. And then for me, I think there's no reason there's no reason not to play Lewis Hall.
I completely agree. I'm 100% with you. He was the best player on the pitch against City.
Mate, I was at the game at Stamford Bridge last season when he played against
Me too. I was there.
When he played against Chesterfield, and he played left centre-back in a 3, and he was superb. And he was man of the match in that game. And then we thought, we're going to see more of this guy.
And we never came again.
And we never did. He's been put in a graft, and he's been impressing, obviously, in at youth level in the 21s and the PL2, whatever he's been playing in. And he got his opportunity against City. And he was superb. He was superb. The guy was playing
really encouraging to see actually how he's improved. Even though the sample size is really small, he had an excellent shift against Chesterfield. And that's good. He's playing left centre back in a 3.
Non-league at the time, though.
But Chesterfield non-league at the time. It was hardly going to ever. It was it was lucky it wasn't a cricket score. It was actually the game was. Yeah, it was more or less 1-6-1,
wasn't it? 5 or 6-1, yeah.
5-1. But actually, then they put him in. You put him in against some Man City. Now, don't get me wrong, Man City's B side to a certain degree, but still some world class players in there. And he absolutely shone. He absolutely proved that physically, on the level of his composure in defending, maybe not so much in attack, but who does in our squad. He really showed that he belonged. Played like he'd been playing for Chelsea for years, like in the first team for years. And so, I was really, really impressed. There's absolutely no reason for me why he shouldn't play.
What's mad is after the game, he was saying that his actual best position is
a midfielder.
Midfielder. He's another one of these guys that, and it's a sign of a very good footballer, is that he's comfortable in multiple positions. He's comfortable playing wing back. He can play in a back 3, and his best position is probably midfield. Obviously, we're probably not going to see him in midfield, but what impressed me the most was it was like the guy that was just playing with no fear. 18 years of age. This is the highest level he would have ever played at in his career, and
pinging balls over the top like it was nothing.
Balls over the top, making fantastic runs, skipping past players, progressing the ball nicely.
Yeah, no,
got into a
that's
couple of
absolutely the
great,
right way to say it. No
yeah,
fear, and that's what we want to see. And having him in the team with a manager like Potter, who can really mold a young player like that, is going to be really useful.
yeah,
There's no reason for me why he shouldn't play off the back of that. If Chelsea is in any way a meritocracy, he should play.
yeah. I think he's given Potter a really, really tricky decision to make. I mean, ultimately, if we go with the three, the only option is whether it's Koulibaly in the three and then he plays Cucurella there, or if it's Cucurella, then Hall has to play.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that. And I think Hall thoroughly deserves his opportunity. And I would be disappointed if he didn't start, because he fully deserves to start, given the situation that we find ourselves in.
Well, I suppose the other option is Azpi at left centre back, Cucurella wing back, and Loftus-Cheek at right back. But nobody wants to see that.
No, nobody wants to see that. With this midfield too, obviously Jorginho missed the game. He's back tomorrow, so I would fully expect him to play.
We're going to need the control in the midfield against someone like Guimaraes.
Yeah, and the fact that also he's got he's not going to the World Cup either, so he can definitely play this. He can definitely play this game.
He'll play the full 90.
I think Jorginho is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. And I think, we're being perfectly honest, if we're looking at other options in there, it's got to be Kovacic, because Gallagher is not a pivot player. Mason Mount's not going to play in the pivot either.
You could throw Loftus-Cheek in there as a physical presence.
You could put Loftus-Cheek in there.
But he's not better than Kovacic, is he?
No, he's not. I think it does have to be Kovacic. I know Kovacic obviously had a bit of a stinker against City, probably one of his worst games for us for a while, but you would imagine he definitely plays again. I would expect him to play. Ultimately, he's our best midfield player, and I would fully expect him to play. The midfield two is going to be Kovacic and Jorginho. I would think the front three. This is where it gets a bit tricky. And it always is tricky with Chelsea, because you've got a situation
where nobody's in form anyway.
Nobody's in form, and then you look for this right-hand side. You're looking at it, and I mean, personally, I'll say, look, I think Christian Pulisic should play on the left. But
I agree.
If we look at, let's stick that in for now. We can discuss this in a bit. But Pulisic, I think, has to play on the left.
He has to start. He's earned it. He had a good game against City. Looked dangerous. He's offered more than a lot of our attackers have recently. No reason not to choose him.
And then this right-hand side is interesting, because at times this season we've seen Sterling play there. We've seen Conor Gallagher be deployed in that role. And we've seen Mason Mount play there as well. Now,
even Havertz has drifted out.
And Havertz has drifted out there as well. And
even Broja.
And we've seen, obviously, Ziyech play there in the week. Ziyech, I actually thought, had an okay game in the week. I don't expect him to be involved from the start in this game at all. But this right-hand side is interesting, because for me,
it's probably the hardest choice to pick. We don't really have a natural right winger in the squad.
Sterling, you'd probably say Sterling was the most natural fit to go there, but he's not in great form. Mason Mount is not in good form either. I honestly don't think Sterling or Mount deserve to start this game. And if I was picking the difficulty team, I wouldn't pick them.
The problem is as well with the choices between Gallagher, Sterling, and Mount and Havertz. You've got 4 players who are all going to be going to the World Cup.
Yeah,
are they going to put in 100%, knowing that there's a chance they could get injured? This
is another thing as well,
and miss out. Certainly the younger players like Mount and Gallagher will be absolutely, and Sterling as well, for how much of a role he plays in the England setup. I would be very surprised if just on the basis of obviously the World Cup is the dream. So I think if you're going to leave it down to it's a difficult decision. If you're going to leave it down to who Potter is likely to pick over who we want to see, that I think that's 2 different choices. On the right hand side, I'm not sure Mount's been the most fantastic this season. I think he's had work to do.
Really struggled.
Yeah, I think so. I think you'd probably get more luck out of someone like Gallagher running Dan Burn ragged down that left-hand side.
Yeah, I mean, if it was down to me, I would probably stick Gallagher here as well. Again, It's not like
It's not the
his.
best choice. It's not the greatest choice because but it's a hard decision. Like, and then there's lots of people in the chat at the moment saying, Mount or Pulisic or Sterling or whoever, and there's lots of options as to who can go there. Ultimately, if I'm thinking right now about who's going to give the most effort, especially with the World Cup around the corner, Gallagher's probably the only one who knows that he needs to keep performing to stay in the team.
And he didn't start in midweek either, which perhaps is that a telltale sign to who's going to play. I'm not. You can never second guess managers, but you would expect that certain players that didn't start in the week are obviously probably going to start today, like tomorrow.
Yeah, I would say that's more likely. So you're probably going to see Gallagher. You might not see Pulisic. You might see Sterling on that left hand side instead.
Yeah.
For that same reason. In my view, that's not the right choice. But
no. I mean, what? I mean, look, this is what we'd like to pick anyway. So we'll stick with we'll stick with Gallagher.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, what are your thoughts on him getting called up to the World Cup squad? Because I think that was the one that took a lot of people by surprise, including myself. I wasn't expecting it at all.
No, me neither. Especially because the Chalobah and Loftus-Cheek both missed out. You would have expected probably either of them to get chosen over Gallagher. I know they played different positions and everything, but if you had to pick one of those three Chelsea players to go to the World Cup, it probably Gallagher would have been bottom of the list. But I'm absolutely gassed for him. Southgate said he's going to the World Cup because he impacts games. And I think that's exactly right. I think Gallagher really, he's really grown in confidence. Had a shaky start to the season, but he's played really well whenever he has played. I think he absolutely deserves to be going to the World Cup.
For sure. And we've got Pulisic on that left-hand side. I know he started in midweek, but I think he deserves a run of games.
Yeah.
Sterling not playing well at all. Pulisic deserves this opportunity to play, and I feel that he definitely should play.
Having said this, we're going to see Aubameyang on the left, Havertz in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
Mount on the right, aren't we?
Of course we will. But having said that, we're going into centre-forward position now. There's probably three choices here.
Yeah.
Aubameyang, Broja, or Havertz.
The outside chance of Sterling is a false nine, maybe, but he doesn't really tend to do that.
but there's three choices here. Broja in midweek, I actually thought he had a decent game, but I think he had the fewest touches on the pitch out of the Chelsea players. I felt at times he was very isolated in that game.
Yeah, there wasn't much he could have really done against, because, City's midfield really shut the game down at times. Yeah. Made it hard for him. But he did really bully Ruben Dias. At times,
I thought he did
did a really good job being a physical presence.
And he's got good pace.
Yeah, it depends whether you want to. I suppose what we want in this position is about what you actually want to see in terms of the football. Do you want to have a more fluid front three? In which case, you probably pick Havertz. Do you want to see, if you want someone to just linger in the box, you want Aubameyang. If you want someone who's going to be a physical presence and can run the channels a bit more, you probably want Broja. So it's kind of about really what you want to see out of those three options.
I mean, personally, for me, I'd probably pick Broja.
I would as well.
But again, I
doubt he will start because he played in midweek. I would like to see him.
I think that skill set probably suits this fixture best in terms of pace.
And physicality.
Newcastle got two big centre backs in Botman and Shah, who aren't the quickest. They've got a bit of pace, but they're not the quickest. Broja would comfortably have the beating of them pace-wise. He's also got that physicality that's really important as well. And if he gets given an opportunity, perhaps his finishing's maybe not as lethal as Aubameyang, but his actual overall game offers a lot more. So I'd be more inclined to pick him personally. I mean, that's what I'd go with, but I do fully expect it to be Aubameyang.
I think it's fair to say this is the team that we would want to see based on both merit and what we think we can get the best result out of the game. And I think it's also fair to say that the team will 99% likely look nothing like this. We'll probably play in a different formation. All the players we've put in are not going to play. But like we said, this is what we would pick. So Bowley, if you're watching, if you do want to sack Potter, hire Charlie and I.
Yeah, mate, I'm down for it. I can take over after the game tomorrow, no problem. But yeah, you look at that team and you think, I don't know. You look at it and you think, well, it doesn't look the best, but I think we need to move away from this idea that if a player's not a big name, then it's not a good team.
I really like Gallagher actually filling in on that right-hand side for the defensive duties as well, where Aspie's there. Really like that, because I think that's going to make us really defensively resolute. Especially covering for Jorginho on that side as well. I think Gallagher brings a lot of utility and energy to that side. The more I look at it, the more I'm happy with this, with our inclusion of him.
Yeah, I think it's I like that. I think it's players that I think it's good use of the squad. I think it's players that are playing on form.
It's a well balanced team.
Players that deserve to play. I think it's quite well balanced. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the strongest lineups we can go with tomorrow, if we're being honest.
With the present personnel we've got, absolutely.
I mean,
people are forgetting. Like if Kante was fit, he'd play. If Reece James was fit, he'd play. Chilwell would probably also play. Fofana would play.
Yeah.
So even Kepa would play. So literally half of this team shouldn't be here on paper.
I mean, and very quickly, if we were to go the 4, you would say that Cucurella replaces Hall, so it goes Cucurella, Silva, Chalobah, Aspie,
and then you probably swap Hall for Mount and stick him in midfield. Yeah, that would be my thing.
Yeah, I think that would probably be about right. But yeah, I think I'm liking the look of that. I think that's fairly decent. Guys, keep smashing the likes for me, please, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Not much left to do, mate, other than a score prediction. Now, is for every game's must win as a Chelsea fan.
Absolutely.
But do you, given the run of form we're in, given the fact it's going to be a month's break, given the fact we're 7th in the table, I'd almost go as far as saying we really need to win this game.
We do, but it's a long season. Yeah. You need to, like you said, we need to win every game. I think, to a certain degree, you can look at the results we've had and we can say, X or Y isn't good enough. To a certain degree, we can also say the season's a little bit of a write-off. So hopefully in some way the pressure's off a little bit in terms of, winning the league. Like there's no chance of that happening. But that's, the whole point of the Potter project in the first place is to, be in a position where we will in the future. I'm optimistic we'll get there. But I don't think it's going to happen this season. So I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't win. However, I'll never bet against us. I'll never bet against us to win. So I think I'll predict a 2-1 win for Chelsea.
Yeah, I think
Pulisic will get one, maybe.
I mean, I do agree with this. Just get 3 points by any means. Then we can just deal with
Cheat,
it after
steal,
the World
lie.
Cup.
Do what you got to do.
Mate, whatever it takes. I don't care who scores, how it goes in. As long as we win, then I don't care.
Bundles in and goes in off Dan Burn's backside. We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. I mean, I'd love to see a 4-0 Chelsea for sure. I mean, that would be phenomenal. But I think unlikely. I've got to be honest. I do feel that this game's going to be a bit of a stretch for us. Mm-hmm. I always stay positive. And I do predict us to win most weeks, either by sort of blind faith or perhaps stupidity. But, it's really hard as a fan to say, oh, your team's not going to win. But I've got to be realistic. And I feel that we probably won't win this game. I could see us getting a draw. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw for tomorrow. And maybe by being slightly negative, that might,
balance the scales of the universe. You never know.
It might balance the scales of the universe out, and we might end up with a win. Yes, Tobago. Yeah, we stuck Gallagher in the starting lineup that you just missed, but we did stick him in there. I think he should play tomorrow as well. So yeah,
like you said, it's important to stay optimistic. But I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't win tomorrow. But to a certain degree, I do disagree with people saying it's a must-win game in a way, because I know because we know Potter isn't going anywhere regardless. We could lose the next 10 games in a row and Potter won't be going anywhere. So, to a certain degree, almost no game is a must-win game per se. But, it's important to do the best you can and for us to see a good performance tomorrow and hopefully a result as well.
Yeah, but for sure. I mean, we'll have to see how it goes. Seems like a good point to round out. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for getting involved in the chat. Really appreciate it. I'll be heading up to Newcastle tomorrow to St James's Park. I'll be up in the gods in the away end. Hopefully we can get a win. I'll be back with the match day vlog from the game dropping after the game tomorrow at some point. So please make sure you check that out. And I'll probably bring you some match reaction as well, because I'll be bored in the hotel room after the game. So stay tuned for vlog and match reaction to come after the Newcastle game tomorrow, the last game before the World Cup. Oli, thanks so much for joining me, mate. Really appreciate it. Guys, make sure you follow Oli on Twitter, linked in the description below. Please do check his stuff out and give him a follow. Yeah, guys, catch you soon again tomorrow. Match day vlog, as I said, and the post-match reaction. But yeah, guys, until then, enjoy your weekend. Take care and up the Chelsea.